The story of Saint Pius V does not begin in power, influence, or prestige. It begins in obscurity, in poverty, and in a world that was already trembling under the weight of uncertainty and division. Long before he would sit on the chair of Peter, before he would influence the direction of the Catholic Church, before his name would echo through history, he was simply Antonio Ghislieri, a boy born into a humble family in 16th century Italy. From the very beginning, nothing about his life suggested greatness in the conventional sense. His family struggled financially. Opportunities were limited. The path ahead was unclear. But there was something different about him, something quiet, yet unshakable. While others sought comfort, Antonio sought truth. While others pursued advancement, he pursued discipline. And while the world around him leaned toward compromise, he leaned toward conviction. As a young man, he entered the Dominican order, a decision that would shape not only his future, but the future of the Church itself. The Dominicans were known for their intellectual rigor, their commitment to preaching truth, and their uncompromising defense of doctrine. Antonio did not merely join them, he embodied their mission. His life quickly became marked by intense prayer, strict discipline, and a relentless pursuit of holiness. But this path was not easy. The Church, during this period, was facing one of the greatest crises in its history. The Protestant Reformation had already begun to fracture Christianity across Europe. Corruption had seeped into various levels of ecclesiastical life. Political powers were constantly interfering in spiritual matters. The unity of the Church was under threat, and the need for reform was urgent. Antonio rose through the ranks, not because he sought power, but because he could not ignore the call to serve. His reputation grew not as a politician, but as a man of integrity. He became known for his firmness, his clarity, and his refusal to compromise truth for convenience. This made him respected by some, but also feared and opposed by others. Eventually, he was appointed as an inquisitor, a role that required him to confront heresy and defend the teachings of the Church. This position was controversial, even in his time. It placed him directly in the center of conflict, where decisions carried heavy consequences. Yet, even here, Antonio remained consistent. He was not driven by cruelty or ambition, but by a conviction that truth mattered and that souls were at stake. His unwavering stance did not go unnoticed. Over time, he was elevated to the rank of cardinal. And then, in 1566, something unexpected happened. Antonio Ghislieri was elected pope. He took the name Pius V. At that moment, everything changed, but in another sense, nothing changed at all. Because, although his title was now the highest in the Church, his approach remained the same. He did not adopt the lifestyle of luxury that many associated with the papacy at the time. He did not soften his convictions to gain popularity. Instead, he intensified his mission. Pope Pius V saw clearly what needed to be done. The Church had to be purified. Discipline had to be restored. Faith had to be lived, not just proclaimed. And so, he began a series of reforms that would leave a lasting mark on Catholic history. He enforced the decrees of the Council of Trent with precision and determination. He worked to eliminate corruption within the clergy. He insisted on moral integrity, not only in others, but first in himself. His personal life as pope remained simple, almost austere. He prayed constantly. He fasted. He lived as a servant, not as a ruler. One of his most enduring contributions was the standardization of the Roman Missal, which would guide the celebration of the Mass for centuries. This was not merely an administrative decision, it was a spiritual one. He understood that unity in worship was essential for unity in faith. By preserving the integrity of the liturgy, he sought to anchor the Church in something stable amidst the chaos of the world. But his challenges were not only internal. The external threats facing Christendom were equally severe. One of the most significant moments of his papacy came with the growing power of the Ottoman Empire. Europe stood on the edge of a massive confrontation, one that could reshape its future entirely. In 1571, this tension culminated in the Battle of Lepanto. It was not just a military conflict, it was a defining moment for Christian Europe. Pope Pius V called for prayer across the entire church. He urged the faithful to turn to God, to seek divine intervention, to unite spiritually in the face of overwhelming danger, and something remarkable happened. Against the odds, the Christian forces achieved a decisive victory. For Pius V, this was not merely a strategic success, it was a sign, a confirmation that faith, when lived sincerely, was not powerless. He attributed the victory to the intercession of the Virgin Mary, and in gratitude, he established the feast of Our Lady of Victory, later known as Our Lady of the Rosary. This moment revealed something essential about him. Despite his strength, his discipline, and his authority, he did not place his trust in human power. He placed it in God, always. Yet, even as victories were achieved, the weight of his mission never diminished. Being Pope was not, for him, a position of comfort. It was a burden, a responsibility, a constant call to sacrifice. He faced opposition, both within and outside the church. Not everyone welcomed his reforms. Not everyone agreed with his methods. But he did not measure his success by approval. He measured it by fidelity. As the years passed, his health began to decline. The demands of his role, combined with his rigorous lifestyle, took their toll. But even in weakness, he remained steadfast. His focus never shifted. His commitment never wavered. When he died in 1572, he left behind more than a legacy of reforms. He left behind an example of what it means to lead with integrity, to act with courage, to remain faithful, even when the cost is high. St. Pius V was later canonized, recognized not only for what he did, but for how he lived. His life raises a question that remains relevant today. What does it mean to stand firm when everything around you is shifting? In a world that often rewards compromise, he chose conviction. In a time of confusion, he chose clarity. In the face of fear, he chose faith. And perhaps that is why his story continues to resonate. Not because it is easy to imitate, but because it challenges something deep within us. Because at some point, every person faces a moment where they must decide to follow what is convenient or to follow what is true. To seek comfort, or to seek purpose, to remain silent, or to stand firm. St. Pius V made his choice, and he lived it fully, without hesitation, without retreat. Now the question is no longer about him, it is about you. If this story brought you a new perspective, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving your like, so more people can discover stories like this.